I want you to close your eyes for a second. Well, don't close your eyes if you're actually driving. That would be counterproductive. But imagine you are driving.
Okay.
It is late at night. We're talking 3 a.m., middle of nowhere, pitch black, no streetlights, no moon, just an endless stretch of asphalt disappearing into the void.
That is a very specific and slightly ominous setting to start with.
Oh, it gets worse. You have your headlights on, maybe even the high beams, but let's be honest. How much can you really see? 100 feet. Maybe 200. You see the white lines flashing by. You know you're on a road. You know the engine is running. You know you're moving forward in time and space. But you have absolutely zero idea what is a mile ahead of you. You can't see the sharp hairpin turn waiting for you.
Right.
You can't see the bridge that washed out in the storm an hour ago. And you certainly can't see the cliff edge waiting 10 minutes up the highway.
It's a terrifying image because it's so claustrophobic. You're trapping us in this little bubble of light surrounded by the complete unknown.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now I want to pull the camera back, way back. Imagine there's an airplane flying directly above your car at 10,000 feet. The pilot in that plane isn't stuck in your bubble. He has a panoramic view. He sees where you came from. He sees exactly where you are right now. And most importantly, he sees the entire landscape ahead. He sees the cliff.
He sees the traffic jam. He sees the destination.
And the crucial part of this metaphor, the part that links it to what we're discussing today.
The pilot has a radio.
The pilot has a radio.
Yeah.
And he is frantically trying to radio down to the driver to warn him about that cliff. But here's the catch. The radio doesn't speak English. It doesn't speak French or Spanish or Mandarin.
It speaks in code.
It speaks in dreams. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are looking at the man in the airplane, the chemical necessity of hallucinations, and why a leaky washing machine might actually be a psychic prediction of a pregnancy.
We have a genuinely wild ride ahead of us today. We're diving deep into the archives, specifically looking at Session 93 of the early sessions. Book 3 of the Seth material.
And for the historians in the audience, the date of record is September 30, 1964.
Wednesday night in Elmira, New York.
Now, before we get into the spookiness, and there is some genuinely chilling stuff in this session, I do need to get the housekeeping out of the way. This podcast is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. We are just the guides here walking you through the source material.
And our mission today is pretty specific. We want to explore a fundamental shift in how we view, the self. We usually think of ourselves as one person, one mind, driving that car.
Right.
But this session argues that we are actually a collection of different areas, all communicating through these incredibly complex symbols.
And we're going to find out how a leaky tub can predict a pregnancy. But let's set the scene first, because what I love about the early sessions is that they aren't just dry lectures beamed down from the cosmos. They are happening in the living room.
Yeah.
You've got Jane Roberts, who is speaking for this energy personality essence known as Seth, and her husband, Robert Butts, who is furiously taking notes in shorthand.
And usually their routine is very quiet. They have dinner, they relax, they go into the session. It's almost a ritualistic silence. But on this specific night, the vibe is totally thrown off.
Right, they get interrupted. Just before 9 p.m., a friend of theirs, Howard Kimball, knocks on the door. And this isn't just a, can I borrow a cup of sugar kind of visit.
Yo.
He actually comes in and buys a painting right off their wall.
This is a huge deal. The source notes mention this is a small abstract oil painting that Jane and Robert had actually worked on together. And Robert notes that this is the first piece of artwork Jane had ever sold.
That is a career-defining moment.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine the adrenaline. You're an artist. You've been working in obscurity, wondering if anyone cares. And suddenly someone puts cash in your hand for your creation. She must have been over the moon.
Oh, she was thrilled. But she was also rattled. You have to remember, she's trying to prepare for a trance state. She's trying to shift her consciousness away from the physical world to let Seth through. And suddenly, she's in sales mode. She's excited. Her ego is flared up in a good way, but she's distracted. Her focus is entirely on this physical validation she just received.
I think that context is so important because when Seth finally does come through, he doesn't ignore it. He doesn't just start pontificating about the universe. He addresses the elephant in the room immediately.
He starts with a joke.
Yeah.
A pretty sharp one, actually.
It's brutal. He acknowledges the sale, congratulates Jane, who he always refers to as Ruburt, and then he drops this line. He says, I hope that you will not find that he is now big-headed as well as pig-headed.
Big-headed as well as pig-headed.
Imagine channeling an ancient, multidimensional entity, and the first thing he does is roast you.
It's classic Seth.
Yeah.
But if we analyze this, it serves a really specific structural purpose in the session. It humanizes the interaction. It reminds Robert and us reading it decades later that Seth isn't the stiff doom and gloom prophet from the Old Testament.
Right.
He's a witty observer. He's watching them live their lives.
It's almost like he's poking fun to ground them.
Exactly. He immediately follows up by saying, he knows I speak only in jest. It cuts the tension. It relaxes the room. It acknowledges the excitement of the painting sale, deflates the ego just a little bit with the pigheaded comment.
Yeah, reminding Jane not to get too full of herself.
And it clears the slate for the work.
And the work in this session is heavy. He pivots from that joke, almost instantly, into dissecting the mind that created the art. And he starts by taking a sledgehammer to one of the biggest concepts in psychology at the time, the subconscious.
Right. We have to remember the era. In 1964, the Freudian model was still very dominant. The popular understanding of the subconscious was very architectural. It was a basement.
The dark, damp place where we shove all the bad stuff.
Exactly. Repressed memories, trauma, the id. It was viewed as a layer underneath the conscious mind, something buried and hidden. Seth takes issue with the word layer.
What's his beef with layer?
He argues that layer implies something static, something that just sits there, like a strata of rock in a geological formation. He prefers the term subconscious areas.
That sounds like a geography distinction. What's the practical difference for us?
Well, an area implies a space that is inhabited. It's active. It has residents. To explain this, he uses this brilliant analogy of a movie theater. He wants us to imagine that the dream you are having is a movie playing on a screen.
Okay, let's unpack this. I'm in the theater. I'm sitting in the velvet seat. I'm watching the movie.
In the standard view, you are the only person in the theater. You are the sole audience member watching your own dream. But Seth says, no. The you that you think of as yourself, the conscious ego, is just one audience member.
Okay.
But sitting next to you, and in the balcony and in the back row, are other portions of the self. They represent different areas of the subconscious.
And they're all watching the same movie?
They are watching the same dream. But, and this is the key insight, they are all interpreting it differently.
Like how two people can watch the same movie and have a totally different take on it.
Precisely. You might watch a film and think it's a romantic comedy. The person next to you might focus on the background details and think it's a tragedy about economic inequality. Seth says that the inner self creates the dream as a unifying symbol. It's one signal broadcast to multitudinous levels of the self.
That is incredibly efficient. It's like a mass email or something.
It is. Think about a corporate memo. If the CEO wants to talk to engineering, sales, and HR, they could write 3 different emails. Or they could hold one town hall meeting where everyone hears the same speech but takes away the parts relevant to their department. The dream is the town hall meeting.
That actually explains a sensation I think we've all had. You know when you wake up from a dream and it feels layered? Like on the surface, I was running for a bus. But deep down, I had this feeling of grief. And also, somehow, I knew it was about my job.
Yes. That's the multitudinous nature of the symbol, the conscious ego. The you that wakes up and drinks coffee grabs one interpretation. But those other areas of your subconscious grabbed what they needed from it too. Seth says, the various layers of the self will interpret the dream to fit their own needs.
So even if I don't remember the dream, or if I only remember a fragment, the work was still done. The other departments got the memo.
Exactly. The communication happened whether the conscious driver remembers it or not.
But here's where it gets a little spooky for me. Seth moves from the psychology of dreaming to the biology of dreaming, and he makes a claim that I found honestly kind of disturbing. He calls dreaming a chemical necessity.
This is where he bridges the gap between the mystical and the medical. He states quite clearly, chemically, the physical body does need to dream.
He talks about poisons. That word really stuck out to me.
He does. He explains that during the day, as we focus our consciousness on the physical world, driving the car, doing our taxes, talking to people, we build up chemical excesses. You can think of it as metabolic waste or toxins generated by the intense focus of the conscious mind.
So focusing on reality literally creates waste.
According to Seth, yes. The act of focusing consciousness in one direction creates a byproduct, and the dream is the detox.
So the dream is like the kidneys of the mind.
That's a great way to put it. The dream state is the mechanism that discharges these chemicals. He says the dream transforms these poisons into human action within the dream drama.
Wait. So the action of running in a dream or fighting or flying, that is literally the chemical dissipating.
That is Seth's model. The mental action burns off the physical toxicity. He warns that without this discharge, the physical body would become clogged with poisons.
Clogged with poison. That is such a visceral, gross image. It implies that if you didn't dream, if you were physically prevented from having those hallucinations, you wouldn't just be tired, you would be toxic.
And he adds that the self would lose all touch with inner realities. So the dream anchors you. It keeps you sane by connecting you to the inner self, and it keeps you physically alive by flushing the system. It's a very mechanical view of something we usually think of as purely spiritual.
It's plumbing.
It's plumbing.
Which brings us back to the road. Because if the dream is the plumbing, it's also the radio. This is where we need to fully unpack that man in the airplane metaphor we started with. Because Seth spends a lot of time in this session defining who the driver is and who the pilot is.
This is really the core concept of Session 93. It redefines consciousness not as a thing, but as a direction.
Okay, let's stick to the car for a second. Seth asks us to imagine a band of men driving cars at night.
These are the conscious egos, the front men. This is the part of you that is awake right now, listening to our voices, checking the time, worrying about your schedule.
The driver has headlights.
High beams and low beams. But even with the best lights, the driver is limited. He is trapped in linear time and limited space. He can only see the road directly in front of him. He has to react to the pothole right now.
Right.
He can't react to the pothole 5 miles away because it doesn't exist for him yet.
Enter the pilot.
The inner self. This part of you is in the airplane. Because of the altitude, the pilot operates in what Seth calls the spacious present.
Let's stop there. Spacious present. That is a very specific Seth term. It sounds lovely, but what does it actually mean?
To us, time is a line, past, present, future. To the inner self, time is a landscape.
Right.
Imagine you are in that plane. You can look down and see the town you just left. That's the past. You can look down and see the car right now. That's the present. And you can look ahead and see the city you are driving toward. That's the future. You see them all at once.
So they all exist simultaneously in your field of view.
That is the spacious present.
So the future isn't something that hasn't happened yet. It's just terrain we haven't driven over.
In this analogy, yes. It is visible to the part of the self that isn't restricted by what he calls camouflage time.
Camouflage time. I love that phrasing. Like time is just a disguise we wear to make reality manageable.
Exactly. If we saw everything at once, we couldn't function as physical beings. The driver needs the blinders to focus on the road, but the driver also needs guidance.
So the pilot radios down.
The dream is the radio transmission. The pilot sees the bridge is out 5 miles ahead. He needs to warn the driver, but here is the catch. And this is why dream interpretation is so notoriously difficult. The pilot doesn't use words.
Why not? I mean, if the inner self is so smart, why not just say, hey, Robert, turn left in 10 minutes?
Because the inner self operates in a reality of pure concepts and emotions, not English grammar. To communicate that complexity to a driver who is stuck in 1 second at a time, it has to use symbols. Yeah. Dense, multi-layered, coded symbols.
So their dream isn't just random firing of neurons. It's a coded transmission from a version of you that can see the future.
And the past. And the present reality you are ignoring. Seth says, consciousness is the direction in which the self looks at any given time.
That's the spotlight theory.
Yes. We tend to think, I am my conscious thoughts. Seth says, no. The self is the entity holding the flashlight. When you point the flashlight at the physical world, you call that conscious ego. When you turn the flashlight inward, or look left, as he puts it, you are the dreaming self.
But it's the same flashlight.
It's the same whole self. It just changes focus. He says, the direction in which the self looks is not the self. You are not your waking thoughts any more than you are your dreams. You are the observer behind both.
Wow. That makes me feel incredibly small and incredibly huge at the same time.
It should. It means you have access to that pilot's view. The radio is always playing. You just have to learn how to tune the frequency.
And speaking of tuning the frequency, we have to talk about the tub. Because this is the perfect example of how that coded radio signal actually works. And honestly, it's where the session gets really funny again, but also incredibly impressive.
This is a masterclass in dream interpretation. Seth takes a dream that Ruburt Butts Joseph had about a tub. Just a simple image of a tub. And he peels it back, layer by layer, to show how the inner self packs information. It's like a .zip file.
Okay, walk us through the layers. Level 1. The superficial level.
On the surface, the dream wasn't even about Robert. It was about Jane. The symbol of the tub represented a fear of aging, being an old tub, a worn-out vessel. It was addressing vanity.
Okay, that's relatable. I'm getting old. Simple enough. Level 2.
The tub in the dream became a washing machine, and in the dream, the washing machine leaked. This was a mechanical reminder, literally a sticky note from the subconscious saying, check the washer, it needs maintenance.
So the subconscious is also the household handyman. I like it. Level 3.
Here is where it gets psychological. The leaking washing machine morphed into a symbol of a leaky ship. Seth connects this to a past life memory where Ruburt and a former gallery administrator, someone he knew in 1964, were passengers on a ship to Boston together in a previous century.
A past life connection triggered by a washing machine.
The subconscious works by association. It links leaking vessel to leaking vessel. Seth explains that Ruburt had been feeling some jealousy toward this administrator in his current life. The dream brought up the past life connection to resolve that tension.
That is some deep processing. But then, level 4, the clairvoyant level. This is the one that blew my mind. This is the man in the airplane seeing something the driver couldn't possibly know.
This is where the pun comes in. Seth says the word tub was a pun. It referred to a friend of Jane's named Marie Tubbs.
Marie Tubbs. Tubbs.
And the leak, or the water in the dream, wasn't about a ship or a washing machine. It represented the water breaking, childbirth. Seth interprets this as a message that Marie Tubbs was in difficulties with a pregnancy or giving birth.
And here is the kicker. Ruburt notes in the source text that they hadn't seen Marie Tubbs in 10 years. They had no idea she was pregnant.
No idea. Zero conscious knowledge. It was completely unknown to the driver, but the pilot saw it, connected via the inner self to Marie's inner self, and radioed down the message using the symbol tub.
And Ruburt actually writes that he has to mail a letter to her to verify if this spooky intel is true. It really shows how the subconscious loves a pun. Tub equals Tubbs. It's almost like a dad joke from the spirit realm.
But it's an incredibly efficient dad joke. Think about the bandwidth. One single word, tub, addressed vanity, household plumbing, past life karma, and telepathic news about a friend. That is some high-density communication.
It makes you wonder how many puns we miss every night. We wake up and say, oh, I dreamed about a bear, and we don't realize it's because we are barely making ends meet or something like that.
That is exactly how it works. We take it literally, but the pilot is speaking in poetic code.
Now, before we move on, I want to pivot to something Seth discusses regarding creativity, because we have a lot of creative listeners, writers, artists, coders, and Seth drops a bit of a bombshell on Jane regarding her own writing.
He does. He brings up Jane's book, The Physical Universe as Idea Construction. This was a philosophical manuscript she was working on. Jane, she prided herself on coming up with this complex concept. She thought it was her intellectual baby.
And Seth says...
He laughs. He literally says, haha, did he really now? Referring to Jane.
That's so humbling. You
Yeah.
think you wrote that?
Seth explains that the idea didn't originate in her conscious brain. It came via intuition while she was trying to write poetry, and then it fully formed in a dream the following night.
So the pilot dropped the package, and the driver picked it up and said, look what I found, look what I made.
Exactly. Seth calls the conscious ego the front man. He says the ego is only the front man in the front lines. The inner self does the heavy lifting, constructing these complex ideas in the spacious present, and then pushes them through conscious barriers.
He says the conscious ego is only too happy to receive them.
Which is so true. We love taking credit for sudden strokes of genius.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Seth validates the conscious self. He says it's necessary. The front man has to deal with the physical world, but he wants us to understand the source.
Right.
If you have a brilliant idea, a melody that pops into your head, a solution to a coding bug, it's likely a radio message that broke through the static. It reframes creativity not as creating, but as receiving.
It's tuning the radio.
Now, speaking of radio messages breaking through, we have to talk about Ruburt's dreams, because the session ends with some notes from Ruburt that validate everything Seth just said about the spacious present and the pilot viewing the future.
These notes were added by Ruburt after the session. He describes a dream he had a week prior, on September 24th, 1964.
Set the scene for us.
He's in a courtroom-like setting. It's formal. He's with his two brothers. They are facing their mother. There is this loud, rushing wind noise in the dream, maybe representing the static on the radio. And the mother says very distinctly, "Father has a spot on one lung."
That is chillingly specific. A spot on one lung.
It is. And in the dream, it feels like a crisis. But here's the reality check. Ruburt notes that 10 days later, on October 4th, the family had a meeting. He explicitly says this meeting was not scheduled when he had the dream.
So the dream predicted the meeting.
It predicted the gathering. The pilot saw the timeline converging, the road ahead, before the drivers, Robert and his brothers, even knew they were going to meet. Robert admits he completely forgot the dream until later, but the clairvoyant aspect is undeniable.
There was another dream mentioned in those notes, too, the bicycle dream. This one feels more symbolic, less literal than the lung spot.
This one is haunting. Robert sees his father riding a bicycle. Now, Robert's father was older, but in the dream, the father looks young, pink-cheeked, healthy like a youth.
That sounds nice.
But there's a glitch in the image. Even though he looks young and it's seemingly nice weather, the father is wearing a heavy brown winter topcoat and a hat.
That's incongruous. Why wear a winter coat if you're young and healthy on a bike?
It's that dream logic again. The inner self is combining symbols. The youth and health might represent the father's spirit or inner state, perhaps preparing to leave the physical body. But the heavy coat might represent the burden of the physical body, or maybe protection for a journey.
And Robert's interaction with him.
Robert writes that he waves awkwardly at him, and the father just keeps pedaling, smiling, looking back over his shoulder. He doesn't stop.
It feels like a goodbye.
It does. And given the spot on the lung message in the other dream, it paints a picture of the inner self preparing the conscious self for upcoming family transitions. The pilot is saying, the road ahead has some bumps regarding your father. Be ready.
It really brings home the idea that we are walking around with blinders on, and these dreams are the only thing giving us the full picture. It's not just about predicting the future for lottery numbers, it's about emotional preparation.
That is the key takeaway. We think we are these isolated individuals, islands, as Seth puts it. But he says, men are not islands. They merely perceive islands. The dream correlates the various manifestations of the self. It connects the islands. It connects you to your past selves, your future selves, and even the inner selves of people like Marie Tubbs.
So let's bring this all together. We've covered a lot of ground today. What have we actually learned from the man in the airplane?
First, we are not just a single self. We are a collection of areas in a movie theater, all watching the same screen but seeing different films.
Second, dreaming is biology. We need to dream chemically to discharge the poisons of daily focus. If you don't dream, you get toxic.
Yeah.
Third, we are drivers on a dark road. Our conscious view is limited to the headlights. But we have a pilot, an inner self, flying above us in this spacious present, seeing the past, present, and future as one landscape.
And finally, the radio works. But it speaks in puns. Sometimes a leaky tub is just a leaky tub, but sometimes it's a psychic text message about a baby, a washing machine, and a past life in Boston, all rolled into one.
I love that. So what does this mean for the listener? How do they apply this?
It means pay attention. When you wake up with a weird fragment of a dream, a broken shoe, a blue apple, a leaky faucet, don't just dismiss it as random noise. Don't just say, oh, I ate pizza too late.
Right. Don't be the driver who ignores the static on the radio.
Exactly. Assume it is a coded message. Ask yourself, what is the pilot trying to tell me? Is there a cliff coming up? Is there a shortcut I'm missing? Or maybe, am I just being pig-headed? The information is there. The radio is playing. You just have to learn the language.
And if you want to learn that language, you really need to go to the source. We barely scratched the surface of Session 93. There are pages of nuance we just didn't get to.
We really haven't. The nuances in Seth's dictation, the way he interacts with Jane and Robert, the specific exercises he gives, it's all in the books. We strongly encourage you to support the publisher, New Awareness Network. You can find these books and dive into the archives at sethcenter.com/the early sessions.
Seriously, go check it out. It's like an operating manual for your own consciousness.
It really is.
And remember, next time you're in a plane, looking down at the tiny cars on the highway, just remember that you are also the car. But you're also the pilot.
And you're the radio.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you in the next stream.
Good evening.